Hi, it's Jeffreyshaw here from Radio FM88 Australia. We're broadcasting from the studios in Springwood, Queensland, Australia, and it's currently now 7 o'clock in Queensland. It's 8 o'clock in New South Wales and Victoria, Tasmania and ACT. For our friends over in the ditch in New Zealand, it's 10 o'clock, and of course, it's 10 o'clock in the morning, where my co-host who runs the show, Andrena, is sitting just below me tonight and today. So, Andrea, you've brought a very interesting guest on tonight, and I take it you can go from here.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, good day, and welcome wherever you are in the world and when you listen to the replay. And today, thanks to Jeffrey, we've got the lovely David, and I'm not sure how I spell your name. I should have asked you how that is before. Is it Neradil?
Neradil, yes.
Yeah, oh, that's good. Yeah, so I know Jeff met you and he shared some pictures of your meeting, and you're into Aircrete Domes, and we've had conversations, and you're a man of many talents. So let's start at the very beginning, when your journey of life, where you were brought up, how you were brought up, where you've been, and what has led you along the pathway to all of these different skills that you do in different schools and what have you. Yeah,
no, cool. No, I grew up south of Sydney, a couple hours below that in the south coast, and a place called Nowra. And yeah, my parents, mum was a nurse and dad worked very hard in a kind of more admin role. But basically, I think what I got from growing up in that country, I love the rural areas. I love nature, surrounded by Kangaroo Valley and Jervis Bay. But I saw my parents just work extremely hard and never seemed to get ahead. So I was kind of out of home and into work by about 17. And, had to be kind of very self-reliant. So that kind of self-responsibility came in pretty early in my life, and just looking after my brothers and things like that. But yeah, I headed up to Wollongong and got into retail and did 4 years of that. Didn't want to go to uni at that stage. And everyone else wanted to get some money in the bank and didn't really know what I wanted to do. But by the age of 22, I was kind of fairly high up in a management role and realized pretty fast that when my boss of only 32 had his third heart attack, that there was a bit more to life than just working. So not long after that, I kind of jumped on a plane and went away for 6 months to discover my roots, because my dad was originally from Vienna. And much to my mother's distress, that 6 months turned into 4 years. And I kind of spent a lot of time traveling around the world but really realized my passion, and that was, I suppose, that freedom of traveling. But really what it was the freedom of responsibility for the first time in my life, and I didn't really realize that till much later, that I had that autonomy, freedom. Traveling, you can kind of follow your nose, and there's a lot of skills you got to do to not make mistakes, but you don't have to worry about anyone else. And that was really the first time I experienced that. So that kind of opened up a whole new doorway. I went over to your part of the world, Andrena, and spent a year or two living in London, and then
right.
packed off to Africa on the way home.
Yeah, because I read about you went to Africa and you got sick. So what called you to Africa?
The honest truth is I watched a lot of Disneyland as a kid, and I just had this idea in my mind that I'd go to Africa before the animals were gone. So there wasn't much more thought than that. I went to Earl's Court back in those days to a little travelers get together, and met up with a guy, and we said, no internet back then, remember, as you'd know. And we said, we'll meet in Tunisia at this hotel on this date. And we agreed to meet there and made our way there. And we fortunately did meet each other and started this journey to me, it was right to the bottom of Africa. I actually hitchhiked literally from London to Cape Town, but took about 10 months. But quite foolish in hindsight, because I went through war zones, military coups, probably could have died multiple times, but really didn't consider that too much. But it was all about the wildlife and the animals, so that's what got me there.
So did you go to, because I've always fancied going to an elephant sanctuary, so going off track, did you go to any elephant sanctuaries or anything like that?
Yeah, well, more national parks where I actually got to see them in the wild. I originally in West Africa, in Ghana, I went to Mole Creek and literally had an elephant stop about 20 meters in front of us. It just had its back to us, sitting over the other side of a creek, and literally turned around And when it finally caught wind of us and it put its ears up and stomped on its feet, and it was almost we thought it was going to stampede us, but it ended up running away. The depressing thing about that is I actually had a camera, an old film camera back then, and I took photos. And later on that day, my camera got stolen, and I lost those photos. So that was a bit disappointing. But I went to East Africa and Southern Africa, and then you got to see great situations with hundreds of elephants and feeding and babies, and yeah, it was just magnificent. The wildlife of Africa is something special.
Wow, amazing! Eh? So let's follow on from Africa. Where did you move on to then?
Well, I initially went through New Zealand and America, and then to London, all around Europe. Africa was literally on my way home, but I think Africa was like the pinnacle of where my spiritual journey started, because it's where I started to really question everything that I'd been brought up with, because I was brought up with a fairly Christian, small town country vision of life that was quite black and white. And I suppose I started to see a lot of the inequality in the world, and really saw how so many people don't have the things we have in Australia, and to me often take for granted. The other side of that equation was I saw people that literally didn't have very much, but they seemed a lot happier than a lot of people in Australia. You know, they'd be picking around a soccer ball made from socks, but they'd be eating together, and the grandparents would be respected, and the family hung together. And even though they didn't have a lot, they just seemed to have a lot more joy. And that was something that was very obvious. And I think the other thing is that I went to the Middle East, and which I thought was going to be the Mecca for, you know, my religious beliefs, but in actual fact, they all hated each other. You know, you got the Jews, the Christians, and Muslims, and no one liked each other. And I was kind of astounded that, you know, that separation that was there. So, you know, the good old thing with me is always going to relate back to food. So I really had a great falafel at the gates of Jerusalem and enjoyed that aspect of it. But you know, I suppose what I really saw was, I saw why can't we just all see each other in the same light? You know, there doesn't have to be that separation. So that was a little bit of the shattering of my kind of beliefs I was brought up with anyway.
So have you got many? Yeah. Have you got many family members? Like you say, you with your family, your brothers, and so was there many of you?
There was three, two brothers. I only got one left, and Mum had a pretty tough time. But she actually has lost 5 children over the journey, which has not been a great thing. So there's me and my younger brother left, and my middle brother passed away at 40 of melanoma, and my dad at 47 of heart disease, and that was, I suppose, that was a very big thing. I kind of started to get the insights. I've always believed in something kind of greater than myself. I realized religion was maybe, I love creation and nature, and I suppose that's why I see God in nature. But getting back to the other side of things, I saw those guys work very hard all their lives, but at the same time, they bottled their emotions and never expressed, and disease got them, you know. So I kind of looked at that and thought, you know, as a bloke, you know, I need to get my words out and express and not bottle things. So I don't know if I answered the question then, but
Yeah. Yeah. So so I was going to ask you about, like, obviously losing family members, and that is like a wake up call on some levels, and especially so young. You sort of go down the pathway of investigating health. Why has this happened, and what could I have done to have helped? And so is that taking you on quite a health journey on some levels as well, to be more aware of feelings and emotions? Because like you say, in the past, men haven't been able to express themselves and let their emotions out, whereas now, you know, we see men hugging each other more and expressing themselves, whereas years ago people didn't do that, did they? You know, you kept quiet and kept it all inside.
I was fortunate that I did have a very loving upbringing and felt always safe and secure, but my parents had a lot of trauma from their own past, just with the periods they were born in, probably more relating where there was an expression attached. So there was the physical thing, but I did observe in their own lives they held all their emotion and stress inside and didn't express it. So that was more the lesson that I saw. There was a physical consequence for not being able to express their emotions. And of course, then when my brother got melanoma, we tried to then use health and diet to give him some, help him through that situation, which played an important part. But ultimately, the fear and everything else and the stress got him. And that was just I suppose that early example of my boss dying at 22, and then I seen those other young men, where men are just working in that kind of old mantra of provide and protect. I'm a hard worker, but life's never been just about work. Life's been about creating some other autonomy and creating choices, which ultimately is, the philanthropic and the community things, even doing some of the business things. It's never been about the business or investment. They've just been vehicles to create choice and freedom and have other options.
So excuse me. Because you run a coaching business, don't you? Is that more for men? Have you brought men into the equation to help them more and more along the pathway, or is it pick and mix of lots of things?
When I got back from that trip in Africa, that 4 years, I very clearly got back to Australia and knew that I didn't want to just be stuck in a job for the rest of my life. And that's where I thought, but I didn't think I was very smart from school. I didn't do very well at school because I did well in the subjects I enjoyed, but not the others. So I actually thought the key when I came back from traveling was to go and study. And I went and studied because at that stage as a mature age student when I was 25, and I did very well, like exceptionally well. And, but I got to the end of that and realized again, I didn't want to just be in a job for the rest of my life. My wife and I, by that time I was married, and we just wanted to go off and travel and I suppose see a bit of the world. But then we kind of got this idea about investment through a friend, and we investigated that, and that's where we jumped into the property side. So long story short, I saw an opportunity where we could maybe buy some property. And even though we weren't wanting to buy property for money's sake, we thought, well, if we buy something, at least we go traveling, we might come back and have something to come back to. And that started a journey of learning how to buy property and invest. But it was always as a vehicle to create freedom, ultimately, to give us our time back and have choice later down the track. So I ended up going then into a consulting role and literally spent 20 years in that area of property and finance. But what's funny is I'm not really a property guy because I really love the whole traveling side. It's that freedom thing. Mm-hmm. So I spend more of my time talking to people about their life and about spiritual things and about family and about the future. And the property and the business side of things are really just the vehicles. They're not even, I don't get excited by them, It's I just link them to my outcome, if that answers the question.
Yeah, no, definitely.
So yes, that's been happening for 20 years, yeah. And it was about 5 years ago that I pulled away from the bigger companies. They were just getting a bit bigger, and to me, starting to forget the clients and a lot more focused on profit and a lot less focused on kind of the best result for the client. So then I just broke away, and then I started my own coaching business that's more holistic. So I understood that if you're going to go and do something, you've got to look at all the aspects of your life. You've got to look at what your goals are, what you're wanting to achieve. You need to still understand your money and finance. You can't ignore those because they're still a part. And then obviously you look at the different investment vehicles that you can, property and business, the ones we focus on. But invariably, it's always still that kind of idea of start with the end in mind. What are you doing this for? And that was, again, future choice and options, and ultimately to have time and get time back earlier in your life. So that's given us the opportunity to have that time, which has now led us to the option of, some of the stuff we're doing with community on the Aircrete side, and, some of the gardening side and those type of things where we can actually share those other things with people who don't have that opportunity at the moment.
Yeah. So do you want to share more about the land and the community and what you're doing regarding the Aircrete Domes? Because I don't really know anything about that side of Aircrete Domes. I've got a clue, apart from a couple of pictures that Jeff has shared.
Yeah. So having land was always a goal, but of course when you go and buy land in Australia, it's getting very expensive and there's a lot of debt. So we ended up doing that with another couple and a good friend, and we bought it together, and we got 9 acres, beautiful land, and it is really lovely. I'm a bit of a bird watcher, so I spend my time out in nature, and I love trees, and I'm more the gardener on the property and less the builder. But one of our ladies in our group, we really like the idea of community. But what I mean by community is really it's like having a bunch of friends hanging out together, having a few meals and a few drinks together, And if someone goes away, someone looks after the chickens or cows, and you're just supporting each other. And you don't have to have 10 tractors or 5. You can share things. That was our idea. It wasn't meaning a commune or anything where you kind of live in each other's pocket. It was just more a support mechanism. So that was the idea of the land. But one of our ladies in our group, Kathy, she's very much an early adopter and a visionary, and she heard about this concept of Aircrete Domes, and she flew to Mexico, and there's a company called Dome Gaia that started that idea, and she was the first person to enroll in an Aircrete workshop in Mexico in the world, and she was the first one from Australia. So she brought the idea back as a solution potentially for affordable housing. Not being a builder, I wasn't that excited about it, but in the building side of it, meaning the building side, because I'm not a handyman at all, to be honest. But I saw the vision of that, and this is the photo you got there is actually the first picture of a dome house that's being built that's got council approval. We believe it's the first one in Australia. It could be the first one in the world, because most people are building these off the grid. And that's going to be a series of 4 domes, and that central area there will be almost 50 square meters, and there's those big arches, but it's 4 interconnecting arches. And I'd struggle with this concept because we built these little ones that are only about 10 square meters, and my wife's going, we're going to go and live in one of those. And I'm going, oh, they're way too small, like no privacy, no light. But when I saw this, the 4 domes together side by side, and they're going to put a big deck out the front, it's looking over a valley. For the first time, I go, well, this actually could be a real living solution for our own home. And the curves are beautiful. But you see how big that arch is, and that's just holding itself up there. There's nothing else supporting it other than the Aircrete bricks and the fabric and the glue that goes on there as well, which gives it a lot of the strength. So that's an exciting journey. I mean, that's the first council approved one. So we were up there last weekend just helping them out with building that. And that's 2 ladies who have built that did our course, and our students, and they're building it by themselves. They've never built before. But the great thing is they can make the Aircrete themselves. It's very similar to a commercial product in Australia called Hebel. It's a very lightweight brick, and it's made from cement, water, and dishwashing liquid, believe it or not. The dishwashing liquid makes the foam, and the foam puts the air in the brick. So they're very light. But the strength comes from the shape, because domes are one of the strongest shapes on the planet. Mm-hmm. And then there's hardening layers that go on the outside. So that little section at the front, eventually they'll put a deck out the front, and they'll get another 50% space. And one of the smart things they've done is do these beautiful arches, which is bringing in at the front and back, that'll bring in amazing light and create some flat surfaces to build on. So every time we go up there, there's a little bit more done. They'll probably have that done by next year. But the other big thing is the cost of it's going to be so much smaller than a normal house. That's really the biggest reason we started on this, after working in the investment area, which is, great on one side for people who want the investment, because obviously it's a great way to create wealth. But for those who just want a housing solution, to be able to maybe build something for 10,000, 20,000, 50,000, 100,000 instead of $500,000 to 1.5 million, that's starting to open options that weren't there for people before.
Wow.
So pretty exciting.
Yeah. So you said I was going to say, wow. So is that like 4? Is that the 4 domes together, or is that one big massive one? That is amazing.
This is one over in Hawaii. It's actually only 2 together, and this is the first one that really gave me an insight that, wow, that looks like a normal house. I could actually live in that. And one of the guys from Dome Gaia, that's his house. He built that, and you can see it's 2 domes side by side, a little walkway, but it looks like a normal room, and it's just got some lovely curves and beautiful light as well.
Of course, that's with the curves. It's good feng shui, eh?
Very much. I mean, where do you see squares in nature?
Exactly. Yeah, nature teaches us a lot.
So there's a whole. I mean, this is not one of ours. This is a picture that we found online, but people are using Aircrete all around the world, because one of the great things about it, and again, it's not to sell it or anything, but because the ingredients are so basic with only cement, water, and dishwashing liquid, it makes it available to anyone pretty much on the planet. So a lot of people have been using these in Africa and in South America, and countries where they don't have a lot of money, but they've got a lot of resources. They got labor is cheap, the resources are not expensive, and because they can make the product and build it themselves, they don't need a builder and all these other things. it's a great solution. The other thing is, kind of people talk about the sustainability aspect because they go, but it's got cement. It uses 25% of cement compared to what's in concrete. So it's a very small amount of cement compared to normal concrete. That one there is actually the biggest dome in Australia, and it looks small in the photo, but you start to get an idea of the scale because you can see Jerry standing on top. He built the biggest dome in Australia, and that's off-grid. That's almost 50 square metres inside, and that's their home. And they were able to build that out in Western New South Wales because the regulations are not very strict out there. And it's beautiful inside. Again, it looks really small until you kind of realise he's a full-grown man standing on top there. It's amazing. So you can do an individual one as well.
So if some, like say a person on their own wanted one, a small one, and that's all they need, because ideally, most of us want to live off grid, and we want to, have that community where we can all share, grow our vegetables, and just and do all sorts of sacred things, and drumming, and this is what we're lacking in a lot of areas. But what sort of price would it cost for somebody just to have a small dome for themselves? What would be a starting price?
Well, that little one that Jeff's just put up on the screen, that is our first dome. And the reality is we built that one to that size because initially we wanted to get some council approval and get an engineer to look at it. But we showed them drawings and they couldn't get their head around it because they couldn't touch and feel anything. So they couldn't do it because it's a first off in Australia. So we decided to build this side. And this is just under 10 square meters inside and just under 2.4 meters high. If you build it at that size, it's classed as a shed. You can't call it a house, but it can be your meditation space. It could be your boys' room. It could be your kids' retreat. And that size costs just under $2,000.
Wow.
$2,000. Yeah.
Just under $2,000. And
that's
again, within our group,
for our listeners.
That's Australian dollars.
Yeah. For our overseas listeners.
And what's interesting is the majority of people doing the courses and learning have no trade skills whatsoever. I say there's probably only 10% of people doing our workshops that have got trade skills, and the rest don't have any. And there's probably 60% of the people doing them are women that have never built anything in their lives, but they've got passion, they've got enthusiasm, they're prepared to get their hands dirty. And I said, so we've now got 3 of these. That one's finished. There's the next one along that. So we're actually teaching them they're getting practical skills doing it live. They're learning how to make the bricks. They're learning how to build the bricks and then do all the finishes as well. And again, I'm not on that part. Now, this is the one that one I showed you, Jerry's one with the 50 square meters. It didn't look very big from the outside, but now you get a scale. That's that same dome on the inside. So when you can see, that's Darlene, one of our kind of team, and she's standing there, you really see how big it is. It's almost 4.5 meters high.
Sure. Fantastic.
Well, that's amazing.
And he's actually a professional tiler, and that's obviously before it was tile. But the finishes they did in the inside with they got the plumbing in there and the shower and the bathroom and a king size bed and all that kind of stuff. And the tiling they've done looks magnificent because that's where he specializes in. But that really gives you a great scale, and the sound, the acoustics are amazing too.
Oh, I bet.
I suppose you could put a mezzanine floor in there too, couldn't you?
You can. With that level, you can. The big one, you can put a mezzanine floor in, absolutely.
A loft.
The one we showed at the beginning, the 4 together, the council approving, that's what they're going to do with the big one in the middle. It'll be the same size as this one, their middle dome, but they're connecting 4 domes together.
Right.
And guess how much it cost for that one, for him to build that and fully deck it out?
$10,000.
$20,000 to build the whole structure, plus deck it out internally, all his power, his water, everything, the whole thing finished internal outside $20,000.
Wow, okay. That's so affordable, for people. Because I mean, like house prices are so high, especially over here, and lack of space. But they look absolutely amazing. So if people wanted to find out more about you, about the schools and the training and what have you, so they just contact you on your Facebook page, or have you got a special school that you set up for people to inquire?
This photo on the screen is from Hawaii, and this is so the guys who originated the idea are Dome Gaia, and you can look them up on YouTube. Kathy went over to Mexico, and she spent about $6,500 to attend a 10-day workshop. So she brought that information back to Australia. So now in Australia, she's the only one that's trained in Australia with that skill. So we're running the workshops, and you can, in Australia, Syntropic Life, that Facebook page. Anyone can send a message to that Facebook page if they want to get more information about attending a workshop in Australia. The difference is what we've done. That's a 10-day workshop she attended. We've condensed it down. In Australia, people can't take 10 days off because of work commitments and things. So we've condensed all the skills into 2 days, so people can go and do a 2-day workshop for $400 and literally walk away and be able to go away and build their own dome. So we've tried to make it really affordable. Because we're not for profit, or a foundation, any money we make, it just goes into the back end of projects. We don't take any money out of it whatsoever. It's more our community side of things. But yes, Syntropic Life is the Facebook page. We're in the middle of getting a website set up at the moment as well.
Because I mean, like you're sharing about the ladies that are building their own, and I think that would be such satisfaction that you've put your own hands in and you've helped to build your own place. I mean, that would be amazing.
Absolutely, it is. As I said, the women are so inspirational, and it's quite interesting, the tradesmen that come along to the workshops, because they've been taught to do everything square and everything has to be level, they really almost kind of does their head in because it's so imprecise. But the whole process is so forgiving. You don't have to do it perfectly at all, and ultimately you don't even see the bricks once they're covered in the fabric. So that's our team, my wife and I, and Peter at the back, who's one of the main builders, and Kathy, who is the originator, and Jerry on his knee down there. He's the guy that built the big off-the-plan one out the west with his wife at the back in the middle. And Darlene's just been over the Dome Gaia and done their advanced workshop. So that's kind of the skill team there. To be honest, I don't do any building. I take photos, do the marketing, and do the gardening. So they take the credit for all the building. It's definitely not me on that side. But I certainly support the product and help get the people to the events on that side.
Yeah, no, it looks amazing. And with the way things are in the world at the moment and all the changes that are happening, what a fantastic idea. And like you say, it's affordable. So there's so many more people could afford to do something like that, which otherwise is out of their range, eh? Yeah.
And look, now we've got the shelter address. One of the biggest things with the workshops is the fun thing that people like the most is sitting around the fire in the evening and having a glass of wine and hanging out together and just talking to like-minded people. And even though we crank out a lot through the day, it's the meeting of like-minded people that really, and there's people that I think people come along and think we're all going to be a bunch of hippies, and then realize we're all quite normal people and just share that common values of nature and kind of community, and it's really quite special. But the thing I'm excited about now is we've got the shelter aspect, but we're starting our permaculture garden. So I'm more excited about that because I'm more the gardener. So we've got 1/4 of an acre of dragon fruit, and now we're going to start building a food forest. And there's a bunch of so the 2 ladies in the middle there, they're the 2 ladies that are building the council approved one on the Sunshine Coast. That's Liz and Kathy. And again, all the rest of our team kind of supporting them, with Kathy on the left and my wife and Darlie on the right. So yeah, women are definitely the drivers. There's no question about that. But we're about to kick off the garden, and then we'll have a really big garden and a food forest. So then we'll have the sustenance, the food, and the shelter. And hopefully we're going to be able to grow enough and provide for others that, potentially might be stuck or need a bit of help, or people that just want to come in and get skills. I think really the biggest thing we're passionate about is sharing skills. And as you guys know, there's so many life skills that are not getting taught at school anymore. And whether that's just basically ironing a shirt. So this is some of the kids building a grey water system that's been off our new facilities, and just getting their hands in the ground. I mean, so many kids don't even know where food comes from anymore. The thing that comes from the freezer, or the milk comes from a carton. So to bring them down there, I've had, some of the young lads there and teaching them how to light a fire. I grew up went to Scouts and played with fire as a kid and responsibly. But simple things like that, starting a fire, going and collecting the wood, and growing food. It's just like, there's so much disconnection with the earth, which is kind of quite sad. So we're trying to bring that in. And the dragon
Yeah,
fruit are
that's right.
amazing. There's such an amazing crop there, and they.
I miss the Australian fruit. Oh my God. I think I shared before on the show that over here the mangoes are like green-eyed bullets. They got even no smell. And you know, I'm used to them like just you take a bite and they just run all down your face. But I do miss the fruit, and I miss a lot of Australia, but I know I'm here for reasons at the moment anyway. But like you say, it's schools. Nobody teaches you the basic skills of life and surviving in life if different things happen, and it's really now we all need to get back to our roots. We need the elders to share their wisdom, to share their stories, and to encourage youngsters, and like you say, getting them back on the land, getting their hands in nature is so important. So many people over here live in these high-rise buildings. They're not grounded, they got no gardens, and they've just lost touch with nature, really.
Hey, before you jump,
and you said
there is a comment that's come through from Diane, who's just asked, do you actually use sand in that concrete building mix? I thought we might just touch on that before we go further.
No, we don't. In a Hebel is a set of commercial product. It's a little bit more heavier weight, and they use sand in that mix. But when we do it, we just use the cement, the foam, and the water. So it's a very lightweight mix. So your strength is not from the brick. That's what people need to understand. You're more like building with the insulation material. And one of the amazing things is the insulation is, when you put bats in a house, because timber and steel don't have any insulation. That's why they put bats in the roof and the walls. So when you use an Aircrete brick, it's R9, which is a very high level about bats. So the insulation of contraction and expansion is amazing, but the strength is not from the brick. It's the shape and the layers that give you the strength. And so no, it doesn't have the sand. You could do it with sand if you wanted to, but we don't. We do it at a very lightweight mix.
So cement, dishwashing liquid, and what?
Water.
It can be
So
grey
literally
water.
you mix up the cement. Yep, it doesn't matter. You just mix up your cement and water. Of course, there's formulas and there's techniques and processes that you got to get right, especially with the foam and all those types of things. And they take the dishwashing liquid and foam that up. And then you're mixing the foam and the cement and water, and that gives your Aircrete. You pour that out into a tray, and then you literally mix it up, pour it out. Next day you cut it. Within a few days you're building with it.
Okay. Right, carry on.
That's fast and simple, eh? That's how it should be.
That is. Yeah. It's like that old thing in the old days with a lot of I think of the Amish, they used to be the whole family got together and they built them a house. And we kind of see this as a concept where a family can get together and a community can get together, and we don't want to go around and build houses for people because that's not a good use of time. We want to teach them how to fish. But if we can spend a couple of days teaching 20 people how to do it, then they can go back to their own communities with their own friends and their own family and get everyone over for a barbie, bring over a few drinks and do whatever they want to do, and they all get together and they could build one in 2 weeks if they wanted to. And that's the power of it. Of course, they've obviously there's a lot of rules and regulations in Australia, and this is my garden at home because I've got a veggie garden at home, and now we're about to kick off the one down there. So I'm just about to stick my potatoes in, and so I can just go out the back there and pick what I want. And now we want to take that to a bigger scale down the land and have enough for a lot more than just a family.
So do you call in the nature spirits and nature elements when you work with all your veggie garden?
I'm certainly in a very quiet space and very present and very connected to the earth and very aware of my environment. I don't sit there and actually call them in, but I'm very aware of that energy around me. My wife, when she comes out, would definitely be doing that. She's a transference healer, so she's very aware of that. But no, I love the subtlety of the energy. It's so peaceful when you're connected to nature, isn't it?
Are these pawpaws?
My grandfather was an orchardist, and so he grew. They're pawpaws.
Pawpaw. Okay.
My grandfather grew apples and grew tomatoes, and he provided, when in the Second World War, he was a primary producer providing food. So that's where I kind of got the influence. So we've always shared the love of the garden and growing things. And it's so satisfying. So now Frida, my wife, can go out in the back and get her herbs and at the moment I've done something different. I don't have a lot of space, so I put 13 fruit trees in a very small space, but I did something called espaliation. You know, when you grow grapes on a vine. So in France, you can grow fruit trees like that. So instead of the space where it takes 2 trees, just because you cut off the branches and make the trees flat, there's no front and back, you can do a lot more. I've got 13 trees in the space of literally where you normally have 2. So she can go out and pick a grapefruit or a mandarin or a lime or an orange, and she's got 13 choices in those trees, and they're all only filling a small space.
But there's nothing more satisfying than, like, you know, when I've cut herbs and you know, and I've picked different things, and having it from your garden, the flavour and the taste is just amazing, eh? You know, it's full of life, vitality. You know, because I was sharing. I went to get some organic apples the other day, and I was down in Glastonbury for a couple of weeks, and of course that's the heart of Somerset where the cider apples grow, and so the packs were 1 week they were all from Australia organic apples, and then the next week they were all New Zealand apples. They weren't any from Somerset, apart from, you know, going around off in the different orchards and helping yourself. So obviously they come with all sorts of different chemicals on by the time you get them. So, you know, it's being aware of getting stuff from your own back garden, eh?
And I think the simplicity of nature just highlights to me, you know, we spend so much of our life with this idea we need to have money and material things to be happy. But ultimately, when you get back to going out to feed the chickens is one of the most fun things you can do. You know, the chickens clicking around. You know, it sounds really stupid, but, you know, there's like, you know, you just kind of so peaceful because you're so connected. And I think ultimately people have got no time, and this whole debt thing has got them in such a spin that we end up forgetting about the things which are most important, which often is our relationships and our health and nature. And that's what I think, you know, bringing our elders down and sharing some of those skills with the young ones is so important. If we can get them off the technology long enough, I suppose. But there's still kids that still want to do it, which is great.
Yeah, and like when you're saying about the camp. Sorry, go on.
We do. I have those chickens next door with my neighbour, and she's 93 years old, and so that's the other aspect of respecting our seniors and supporting our seniors. And she lost her husband a couple of years ago, but we have the veggie garden together and the chickens together, and my wife spends time with us. So we've got community together just with our neighbours, and now we're building it down on the land. And again, these are to me what are the important things. So even though you might focus on business or investments, ultimately is to give you that time to focus back on the things that are most important. I suppose that's that kind of coming the whole circle, isn't it?
Yeah. And talking of circles, like sitting around a campfire, I know I've gone camping, healing weekends, and where you all sit at the end of the day around the fire, and like somebody might play, you know, their guitar and people sing, but it's community. And I think, you know, a lot of us have lost that connection, and you know, when you're all sat around a fire, you know, people are sharing stories or sharing their wisdom, and you could be sat there till the early hours of the morning just chatting away and in that zone, eh?
I think my wife's from New Zealand, and she's got a Maori background. And one of the things I love in New Zealand is you as soon as you go back there, someone gets the guitar out and there's some food, and it's just simple food often, but the food's great. And then someone gets the guitar out, and all of a sudden everyone's connected, and just in, you know, just such a simple way. And it's so loving and so back to nature. And in Australia, we've kind of lost that to a degree. We've kind of got, you know, we've moved away from the land and lost a lot of connection because, you know, people are living in cities and high rises, and you know, I think we're missing out a lot. But maybe some more people are moving back out to the country at the moment. So even with everything that's going on, there could be some positives to it in that regard.
Yeah, I think so. I think that more and more people are connecting, they're talking and sharing, and you know, obviously with lockdown and, you know, all the different things that have been going on, it's given the people have connected with neighbours more because they couldn't go anywhere. And I think, you know, I've spoken to different people. I mean, I talk to everybody. I just can't help myself. And is so important to just get back to nature, get back to your roots, and just talk to your neighbour. Just say hello. Can I do anything to help you? And just let it evolve from there, and sort of start up little groups. If you're on your own, I just say to people, we'll put out on Facebook, I live in so and so. Is there any like-minded, or is there anybody like to meet up for coffee, and little things like that? Start your own little groups. Let's start at ground level and reaching out to people.
Yeah, we went to a tiny house expo the other weekend, and that's where that photo of Jeff and I was. And there's so many young people that just the idea of having this big $1 million mortgage, just they don't want it, so they're looking for an alternative solution to have something smaller and not have the debt. Because then, if they don't have the debt, they have their time. They get their time back, and then they get their time with their kids. So we've had quite a few people coming down and inquiring about, can they put their tiny house down on the land? So we're looking at options to do that. But again, you've got to jump through the loops of council and different things there. But it seems like we're going to be able to do that. So, and with the garden, we're potentially going to open up the option where we have like some workers' cottages where people can come in and maybe exchange their skills, and for, work in the garden, they get some accommodation. So we're looking at some options like that where it can be more a practical solution, because I think there's going to could be quite a few people around that maybe need a roof over their head and maybe don't have income, but they've got great skills, and so we can maybe look at an exchange there. And again, they can share their skills with others. Then we're that's kind of paying it forward to a degree as well.
Wow, fabulous. So is there much loopholes in, like if you've got a large lump of land, is there much loopholes in building these domes?
There's kind of three pathways. The one is you would just choose that small one, and they're officially sheds, but you could have lots of sheds on there for lots of different purposes, but it's a shed, it's not a house, and that's what it's classified as. Then it just depends on your location. Like Jerry's one is off the grid. It's Western New South Wales. The council, when you go to regional areas, they're not as strict. They might say, well, it's primary production land. You can have 3 structures. They don't really care what you build or how you do it. They're not into the detail. But as soon as you move into a more densely populated area like the one in the Sunshine Coast, there's very strict rules. Right. In saying that, the council provide guidelines. The key is having a good engineer. And if the engineer signs off on the product and works with the council's certifier, and they can work together and get the ticks, the council can't say no. It can be because you've ticked all the boxes. So the council doesn't have a lot of the experts and professionals in-house anymore. So as long as the professionals get together and sign it off, and we've got a good engineer that works with our students and has the vision and understands how it all works. So yeah, getting that first one done has now set a precedent. So there's domes we just did a drive up to Yeppoon. They were building a dome there. We came down the coast to Bundaberg, and there was someone else building a dome there, and they're all our students. And now the one in Flaxton and the Sunshine Coast, and they're going up all over the place now, and it's great. It's great to see. It is really great to see. Fantastic. So there is a little bit of a movement.
Awesome. That's fantastic. So I don't suppose, is there any in the UK? Have you heard?
I'm not sure. I haven't heard. There's certainly in America and South America and Africa as well, because a lot of the countries that don't have strict regulations just jumped on board. They just started doing it. They've got the labour, and there wasn't a lot of rules. But anywhere where there's very strict governance, it makes it a lot harder. So no, I'm not sure about the UK, but there certainly would be a need for it, I'd imagine.
So
maybe one in your own backyard, eh?
Yeah, well, I got to find one first. I'm still traveling. So what is your vision now that you've got this up and running, and this is obviously rippling out and it's going to take its own momentum? Where do you want to go with all of this? What do you see the much bigger picture?
Well, we've started like some free community days, and we've called it Rec Club. And Rec Club stands for Regeneration, Education and Connection. So we really want to open that up to become a platform for education and learning and skill sharing. So a little bit like what you're doing online. We've done quite a few of those events, weekend events, and we had a lovely one a few months back where we just basically, people came down Saturday afternoon. We had about 70 people there, and we had someone come in and talk about syntropic agroforestry, which is a fantastic way of growing a food forest. And then in the evening, we had dinner together, and everyone brought their kids, and the kids just had a play. Everyone stayed up and connected. And the next morning we had breakfast, and we spent a few hours in the garden, and then we had a walk around the property. So that was just a free community day. So we're interested in bringing in other guest speakers in other areas to kind of share their knowledge and skills, and then open that up to our close friends and family, but also to the greater community as well. So that's where the vision's heading. And if we can get the garden going, and again create, I suppose the simple answer, if we can create a little template for community that kind of has all the major ingredients, then other people can copy that and duplicate it, and then go out and do it in other places. Because we don't want to, unfortunately, it's very difficult to build a large community of hundreds and hundreds of people. The regulations don't allow you to have that many people, but you can have a small amount of people depending on what your land is and what the rules are, and mirror that out, and that's what I think is important. And I think then it's open to a lot of people as well, especially families and extended families. I mean, that's the easiest way to start.
And like you say, if you can get them off of technology, because everywhere you go, all you see is everybody looking down, and your children, I know they use them in schools and everything, but as far as I'm concerned, there's too much technology, but that's the way of the world. Everybody does everything, because like I've had to learn to do more things on the phone. I mean, I embrace technology, and I know as is useless, but sometimes I think, oh God. But then I'm the older brigade, so I haven't got the patience.
Yeah, look, there's a fine line, isn't there? I use technology, but I don't have it in my hand all the time. And when we go down there's no internet anyway. So I just put it down when you're in the garden doing those things. But what was great when we had the rec club of a few months back is all the children, they weren't on technology. They just played. They literally played for 2 days straight. They ran around with swords and shields, and they got their blocks of aircrete and carved them into shapes and made a dragon's head. And they just did that old-fashioned fun, and it was... And they didn't mess up. They just had fun the whole time. The parents weren't watching them, but the parents were very aware. A lot of those kids were homeschooled. A lot of them, just are already living on the land, and they're already connected to that. And the technology is not even a big part of their life. They don't even crave it because they're outside. I remember talking to one couple there, and the guy in particular had 2 sons, and he's taught them survival skills. And he said to his 2 boys, right, you got 15 minutes and it'll be in a rainy day, you got to go out and start a fire. Like, no matches, no petrol, nothing dry, and they had to go and learn how to start a fire in 15 minutes from nothing, and they had a fire going in 12 minutes.
Wow.
And his kids could do that, That's amazing. And Peter in our group works for SES and has amazing skills. I mean, just simple things like how to tie knots. I mean, knowing how to tie knots is so amazing because you can use it in so many places. And I don't know, most people don't know how to tie a knot.
Just their shoelace, hey?
Maybe their shoelaces.
No, only when they get married, mate, but tie the knot.
Not even it.
Hey, my turn. Hey, I've been to a few communities around the world. The one that Finton was the one that was really surprising because it grew from humble beginnings from a caravan on just next door to a rubbish tip, and then it became quite famous for exactly what you guys are doing, particularly with the fruits and the gardens and working with all the different elementals in the spiritual kingdom, a place called Finton. They've actually evolved in many areas of life where if you start looking at family-based businesses, the first one builds it, the second one takes it even further, and the third generation loses it or spends it. I've always been interested in, when you set up the community, how do you set up entry and an exit strategy for people who wish to invest and then wish to pull out because they their partner and themselves, they may have divorced or they're separated, one pulls out, and you might see the community dissolved because of a personality clash. What do you say when people putting their hands up to go off grid, set up a self-sustainable eco village or whatever you want to call it? When someone says, "Excuse me, before we go any further, here's a legal document for you to sign." How do we go from there? I mean, obviously a legal document does provide that entry and exit strategy, but most people, from what I gather, they actually come from a heart space. They wear their hearts on both sleeves, and they don't really want to get involved in this commercial reality of legalese. I mean, they just want to jump in. It's quite an emotional connection to the thought and the process. So for someone to come in and say, stop, here's a legal document you've got to sign before you jump in here. I mean, what's your strategy in regards to that?
Yeah, look, there's some very real issues there, and really big factors. And what we've learned so far is the thing that brought us together as a group was our values. Our values are very closely aligned. We're very different people, but our values are definitely closely aligned. So I think that's the number one most important thing. Number two is communication. You've got to have a method of communication. We started with something called kensaning, which is a Japanese technique where you get in a circle and you kind of speak to the center, and basically you get agreement, like circle communication. And we practiced that for a good year or two. And it was really good to bring you into the heart, but often it was very slow to make decisions. And now we've got to a stage and do that communication in a faster manner, but we still get consensus. Consensus on major spending, consensus on major decisions. Other than that, we have smaller hubs like the three boys that are running the garden. So the girls have given us permission. We can make some decisions by ourselves, and we just have to report back. We've got a glamping facility there. The girls drive that a bit more. So they do things over there, and they kind of just check in and update us. So there's a bit of reporting there and a bit of self-responsibility, but consensus on the bigger areas. And I think the other thing we've realized is that it's not just someone rocking up. If someone would want to get involved, we probably want to get to know them for a good 6 to 12 months. I'd say 12 months easily to get a feel. So you wouldn't be just getting a legal document from day one anyway. You'd sit down and hang out together and break bread together and spend time together, the good times and the bad times, and then still decide if you want to hang out together before you'd even go to that place. But the long-term solution, I'm a bit more of a pragmatist because I've worked in the area of business and property for so long. I've got no issue in looking at, I understand the heart-based stuff, and I understand that we want to have emotion and be happy, but I also understand that humans are humans, and we need to also look at the practical things of if someone dies, if someone breaks up in a relationship, if someone has financial issues. So we're actually going through that right now and planning with that literally at the moment, because you do need a solution, and we'll need a solution not only for ourselves, but in the future if other people come in. But the other big thing I think that's important as well is, it's a simple thing, but you've got to have some skin in the game. Like, you've got to have a little bit of something to lose. I mean, we've invested our time and our finances, but we've opened it up to a few people who had a great opportunity but didn't have any skin in the game, and they didn't take advantage of it. So it's interesting that if someone doesn't have, I don't know, a financial commitment or just some kind of more solid commitment, that then for whatever reason they don't seem to take it as seriously, I suppose. But you got to have your tribe. You really got the values. The values underpins everything. I think the agreement kind of comes down the track.
All right. So currently, if someone wishes to leave the group now, would you have to pay them out? I mean, would there be a consolidation of funds there, or the current members then would put money in the pocket to actually pay the other one out?
Yep, we're literally in the process of working through that right now. So we haven't decided the final decision there.
But you guys come from an ethical position, so you wouldn't leave them short change, would you?
No. I mean, at the moment there's only 5 of us, 3 entities, so we're all equal shares. So there's no one wanting to leave, and there's no one wanting to. But we're the ones who have to get a plan now for the future if other people do come in, that we could show them. And it's more the point if something happened to one of us. If something happened to one of us and we left the planet earlier, there has to be a solution for somebody else. But we want a solution that's going to keep the community intact and not put it under duress. So we all want that. It's just what that's going to look like. So we're talking about a few things, but we haven't finalised it yet. But we literally had a meeting yesterday, and it's on our agenda, and we realise we need a whole meeting just for that because it is such a big factor. But it has to be talked about. It's just like, it's an important thing to talk about.
Well, nobody really talks about death, do they? I mean, or setting up wills or how you want to be your service, do you? Yeah. It has to be said, doesn't it?
I've always found that quite interesting, and people avoid talking about the things they're uncomfortable with, and then invariably something does happen, and then there's a mess to clean up with everyone else that is then really difficult and really painful. But we're all going to die. We know that we're all going to die, and we're all going to move on at some stage. That's inevitable. There's going to be change. There's going to be death, and I prefer to plan for it and have a solution in place so there's not stress for other people, and that's the approach we're taking. But there's still a bit of detail to work out. But the good thing is the values are there and the intention is there. That's the most important thing. And the heart is there. Because at the end of the day, it's not a profit-driven thing for us, We want to leave a legacy not just for us, but for other people into the future and create something that can be duplicated not only in Australia, but around the world and bring people back together. I mean, that kind of, get us back to where we came from. We're all one people. We're not different people. It doesn't matter what colour, creed, or race you are. We're all the same people.
Yeah, the frogs are going well tonight.
I've had some good, decent rain. I think if I was to say last night's rain filled the swimming pool up 5 mosaic tiles. Those little mosaic tiles. Yeah, so 5 of those just came through, mate. I mean, I found that if it rains like that, you just got to go get out there in the rain and bloody do a backwash in your pool, so that you empty it and then get let the rain come in and fill her up again. But then you've got a really good pool for a couple of months. Actually, last night, it was like you're talking about counting sheep. I mean, I was counting this one particular frog, and I counted 161 bloody beats. I suppose you got that down.
You got, Jeff?
No, probably need G. I actually used to have a couple of green ones. One used to live in the bloody mailbox, and went around the garage. But we do have the occasional toad too. So yeah, I've got down this part of the world. Yeah.
Man, I just bought a poster just sitting up here, and it's all the frogs in southeast Queensland. So I'm a bird watcher, so I love going into nature and seeing the birds. Now the next thing is learning the frogs. So we've got a beautiful green one there at the moment sitting in our sink that was there yesterday. So yeah, when the rain comes out, it's magic.
You got that right. Yeah. Although it was yesterday or the day before, I had 2 magpies come into the front yard here, and we've got sand that's come out of the sand filter, which we've used to fill up the camellia tree root, So I poured it in there, and I see the female magpie's gone and built a nest using the sand. So she's gone and laid her eggs. But the rain that's just come in the last 2 days has washed out the eggs and the train.
Did she lay the nest in the ground?
Yeah.
I've never seen a magpie lay a nest in the ground. Sure it wasn't a plover?
No. Those plovers are bloody. I mean, I don't know. They're dumb, aren't they? Eh?
Well, they're aggressive. They're good mothers. You don't go near them. Yeah. Well, they lay their eggs on the ground. They lay their eggs on the ground. Magpies are usually up in the tree.
Yeah, it's really strange, mate.
I mean, I get carol when they're...
Yeah, he's right. Yeah. But those plovers, I mean, there's a mob with 2 of them. There's actually 2 sets up in my street here, and there's one. It parks. They drop their eggs there just a foot away from the main road, and then they have a chick, and you probably see the chick about a week after it's born, and the next second it's gone, mate. It's either roadkill, because the park their nest right by the road. They haven't fought yet. I don't know. They park anywhere, don't they? I mean, gosh, at the Rexdale Bloody Girl Guides, they used to put it on the roof just as you come through the front door, and they're bloody swooping down on you.
Well, a few must survive because they're one of the most gregarious birds in the country, and you see them everywhere. So their numbers aren't going down; they're going up. So I think they're pretty smart.
Yeah. Anyway, so talking about that, I see the rainbirds turned up, or the stormbird turned up here on Monday from New Guinea. That's a blackbird with a red beak thing, and pretty elusive. It took me about 15 years before I was able to get really close to take a photo of them. But sure enough, Monday night started bloody screeching on, going on. So I thought, okay, we've got 7 days before the rain comes. But anyway, it was only lasted 24 hours and the rain started coming in it. So,
yeah.
You must have
people don't realise this time of the year we get a lot of migrants down from Papua New Guinea. They're Indian koels, Koel, and they come down from Papua. And there's also drongos. Drongos come down at the moment. They're a beautiful bird. Dollar birds come down, and a lot of channel-bill cuckoos, big bird, and they come down and make a heck of a noise. But what they do is the male flies out, and all the other birds get threatened by it and go and attack it. And the female goes over and finds the nest of the crow and drops her egg in it. And then later on, the crow goes back, sits on the nest, and that bird hatches, and then it kicks all the crow babies out, and the crow mother brings up a channel-bill cuckoo. So that's a parasitic. Yeah, and there's different cuckoos that do that. They all do it, so it's a bit sad for the babies. So they've it's pretty interesting actually.
If you go to
me, going into nature and bird watching is like a meditation, What's that?
Well, if you go to Brisbane's Fisherman's Island, they've got a huge big rookery there of these migration birds. I think they come from Russia, from memory. They come down there. Huge big place.
Yep.
So they've created a billabong down there, and they had the Port of Brisbane's little cafe and a little museum about how Fisherman's Island was created. Anyway, and then they, out on the other side of the billabong, they had for the humans, they could come out and they had all their bloody shelters and that stuff for barbecues. Mate, they had to surrender, mate, to the birds. The birds took over. And that cafe, and they had the Port of Brisbane, they just had to close up shop because they had to put up netting and all that stuff, and they just coming in and they just took over. And even in the barbecue areas, they just took over. It was just a roost, So it was really interesting to see how they've taken over.
Well, they were there first.
It's amazing. They were, and a lot of people. That category of bird is called waders, and a lot of them they all come down from Russia and Northern Europe, and then they fly all that way down. But their numbers are getting less because they're losing the radar. The seasons are changing, nature's changing, so the numbers are decreasing, unfortunately. But they make that travel that distance every year, come down and go back. It's amazing that they can do that and find their way.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Wow.
The Port of Brisbane, that's one of the locations they land.
Oh, amazing.
So hopefully I can still travel again sometime and get back to the rest of the world. And there's a lot more birds to see in the spare time,
Well, you just go down the Gold Coast, don't you?
Yeah, that's. I've seen those before, Jeff. I want to see the ones I haven't seen before.
Okay.
Right then, I think we're coming to the end of the show. So thank you so much, David. It's been absolutely amazing, especially seeing all the different domes and the shapes and what can happen. And like you're coming from a heart centre, so you're building out and bringing in community back together and, sharing. It's lovely what you do. So keep up, and I know it'd be successful because that is so needed, and this community is needed now more than ever. So, thank you so much for being our guest this week.
No worries. Thanks for having me in. It's been lovely to talk to you, and thanks for inviting me, Jeff. And we'll catch up a bit locally, and hopefully get back to the UK at some time in the not too distant future.
Who knows?
David, it was a great conversation on your part, mate. It was really enlightening. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Mate, plenty more of those ahead, eh?
Yeah. All right. Love your work. So if you just stay on there, I'll just end the broadcast here, and then we'll go back to the normal programming for the radio station, and then we'll just have a little quick wind up privately. Okay. Thank you for listening, folks.